All right, good morning, everybody. It's good to have you. Today, we're going to be talking about the team charter. And so the title of the webinar today is the Team Charter, Creating a Tool Which Gives Structure, Accountability for Team Interaction. And so in the webinar today, one of the things I'm going to do besides talking about components of the team charter is I've taken just a real basic team charter and I've broken the pieces down and I've put them on a slide so that you could see them. I thought that would kind of help you. Over the years, we've had a lot of different things to try to hold our teams accountable and to try to put forth the best effort in being able to get along in a team and interacting. And so we've had codes of conduct, we've had team guidelines, we've had a lot of different things. What is evolving today is something called the team charter. And the team charter and the project charter are not the same thing. A team charter focuses on the team, how we're going to interact, behaviors that we're going to have when we're going to meet. And it's become much more popular in the probably the last 3 years. It's even gotten so popular that it has filtered over onto the PMP certification exam content. So this is something that really gives you some structure for your team. So let's take a look at a couple of things. Today, we're going to look at several pieces of this. We're going to compare the difference between the team charter and the project charter. And I'm going to talk about that very briefly. And then we're going to discuss barriers to a good team charter, discover the roles and expectations of each stakeholder, create customized ground rules for the team, and creating an escalation path to follow when members violate the team charter. And so we'll go through each of these components in this hour. So let's talk a little bit about the influence of the team charter. PMBOK 7th edition actually introduces and talks about the team charter. Other PMBOKs have referred to being able to control your team, maybe even code conduct type of things, and obviously behaviors of how we should be. But the team charter is actually specified in PMBOK 7. And of course, we also have seen it come over onto the exam, the new exam content for the 2021 changes to the PMP. And so it's not uncommon right now since 2021 for them to ask several questions on the PMP about this. But team culture is a ripple effect of integrity, transparency, positive discourse, and others. But the team charter can set the tone and drive these cultural changes. And so that comes all out of PMBOK 7th edition. And I agree with that. And that's one of the reasons why I think the team charter is going to really be such a success, both in traditional projects, and you could even have it also in the Agile project. So it's not discipline controlled in either way. It could be in any of those type of projects. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between the project charter and the team charter. Occasionally people hear charter and you think, oh, it's the project charter. Okay, so let me just hit this real quick. So the project charter, as most of you already know that are on the call, is that the project charter is really there to initiate the project. I mean, that's what it's there for. It happens in the initiating process group. The charter is really the first official document in the project management process. The business case, feasibility study, all of those type of things are normally looked at as pre-project documents to justify to management the spending of that money. And then if management looks at the business case and the feasibility study and they like it, they normally will then determine, yes, we want to invest that money. We believe it's going to bring enough value to us. And so then the charter is where it will start. And so even in PMI's mind, the charter is really the document that starts the project. And the reason for that is the charter is what appoints the project manager, and the charter is usually what gets signed off on to appoint the money and or allocate the money. And so once those two things are signed, in PMI's mind, nothing else really needs to be signed off on because you've got the charter, you've got the project manager, and you have the money. So it signs the project manager, it funds the project. That's what the project charter does. The team charter, on the other hand, is focused on the team. So it's going to guide the team based on their meetings. It's going to assign processes or procedures and how meetings are going to run with the team. And then it will also set what we would follow during the meeting. And one of the things that some of the literature from PMI and even from the PMP test coming out about on the team charter is it would even discuss what do we do when we disagree or we can't agree in the team meetings. And that's really a good thing to go ahead and talk about. What do you do when two people cannot agree on the solution or can't agree on an estimate or something like that? And so those are some things that they've added into this I thought were really, really good, because you do see that happening. And even the best of teams and the best of people are going to disagree. And even on the best of teams will even have two different solutions that they will look at on some of these. So working in a team, it really has two different sides. And so when we talk about that team charter, how we get together as a team really makes a difference. Now, there are some people who still have the old school mindset that the project manager is just going to spoon feed the assignments and spoon feed the answers to the team, and they're just kind of the worker bees. And so if that is the environment that you're working in, or the environment that you really hold to, that's fine. And that might even be the culture of your organization, but that's a long way from the team charter. You're not needing a team charter if the team's not making decisions, if the team doesn't have some kind of empowerment or some kind of feedback system to be able to communicate about the project. The charter is going to work best where you're trying to raise your team up to where they are also independent thinkers of the project. They're there to talk about it. They're there to give recommendations. Even if they don't have power to make the actual final decision, you want them to be able, as experts, to give some feedback on this. So when we talk about this, a couple of things of the two sides of the team charter would be what teams do and how teams relate. And so you're wanting people that on that team to where even though they disagree, and they're going to disagree, that's just the normal side of teams. On when you're talking about project management, you want them to be able to disagree in an agreeable fashion. You want them to be able to communicate their side without thinking about or without wounding everybody in the room and slaughtering those who disagree. That's not what you're wanting to do. And so that's the reason why the charter is one of those tools that can help in this way. So when we talk about the team charter, it focuses on what the team will do, how they relate to each other. A team charter focuses on the team's engagement when meetings occur, the behaviors, the obstacles, the protocols to increase communication. So it's a tool that's going to give you the box or the structure of how you and your team can interact and engage. Now, some folks would say, well, we don't need a team charter. We just facilitate those things. And you might be right. Many people have very strong facilitation skills and they can facilitate it. The people all kind of have unwritten rules of behavior and codes of how they're going to interact. And you've got good people. You might not need a team charter. It's not, I would not say it's mandated for every project, but if you have a project team that's struggling in that facilitation process, or they're extremely quiet when you're trying to talk about the different sides of a project or what could go wrong with the project, you might be wanting to put some of this together to where people feel like they can say what they need to say in a right way, as you know, not trying to hurt someone else, but say something that might be an opposing view. And even a good project manager would want to flip the coin on a topic or a solution and look at it through new eyes of being able to look at, see, well, how would the customer view this? New eyes of how would management view this? New eyes as, is there another solution that would work better or would be faster, cheaper than what we're looking at? That's just part of being a good project manager or a good team, is looking at it through another set of eyes. But that's what a team charter is. So in creating the team charter, it's more than filling out a form or a template. And sometimes people say, well, my gosh, I don't need another template or another form. You're absolutely right. If it's just mere paperwork, then that's a waste of time. You fill out enough stuff to be able to report the performance of your project and to be able to document some of those things if you're doing traditional projects. Of course, it's not, the goal is not just to have another template. The goal is to have a tool, though, to where we understand how we're going to interact and to build a safety zone for our people to disagree and a safety zone for people to share each side. That's what you're trying to do. And so if you're doing that through facilitation and your team has such a high trust that you don't need this, and absolutely not, don't waste your time on it. But if it's a new team, this might be a tool that will help structure that and lay that foundation for what we're talking about. So creating a team charter can happen in a meeting where key stakeholders discuss the desired outcomes of the team meeting and how they should run. And so it just allows you to put some of that structure. One of the pieces that I really like about this too is that it gives you an opportunity to talk about your expectations of the team. And so in other words, what do I expect my team to do? What do I expect them to do about attending? What do I expect them to bring to the meeting? All of those type of things gives you an opportunity to talk about it. Now, as I talk about these, you think, well, my team does all the right stuff. Perfect. You've got the utopia team. God bless you. That's what we all would love to have. But sometimes you don't have that. And sometimes you don't have it because people are working on so many different projects. I was just reading a report early this morning And it said that the average team member is on two to five teams right now. The average team member is working on 2 to 5 projects. And I was thinking, okay, so what does that do to everything that we're working on? And especially if you have a crisis in one of those and you're trying to talk through some of those things. And so it complicates everything we're trying to do. You normally don't have one person working on one project to be able to engage. You've got them working on 5 and you're trying to get them to engage on all 5. So it can be a challenge. So let's talk about some of the benefits this charter, if you do choose to do this with your team, will bring. Okay, it helps new team members fit in quickly. So if you have new hires don't understand the culture. They don't understand the rules on the team meetings. They're going to be nice people. They're qualified, or you wouldn't have hired them. But many times they're trying to bridge into that culture. You're wanting them in that culture to be able to engage real quick. You're not wanting them to take 18 months before they finally start sharing their thoughts or what they see or what they think. Order for all the meetings. Are we going to run it with an agenda? Now, most of you probably are running everything with an agenda now. You're probably you've got your agenda, you're following it. You might even have times associated with that. That's awesome. The challenge that we see, though, in some cases, there's still a group of people that do not run things with an agenda. And so I'm not talking about an ad hoc meeting that we're just all jumping on to talk about an issue. I get it on that. That's fast, and an agenda maybe wasn't put together. But I'm talking about our status meetings, our monthly meetings that we have. And it builds the foundation for a greater buy-in. People feel safe. They feel these are the rules. And people give their word that they're going to follow those rules. And so it allows people to be able to take the best foot forward, that they're going to act right and treat people right. Roles and responsibilities sometimes are more clear because you've got a team charter, transparency, and that's the piece of trust that you're going to be able to build. If I'm not transparent in the good and the bad, and our team's not transparent, then there's always that little piece of deceptiveness that's there, or we're always hedging what we say. So nobody's really saying what they think or saying what they really believe needs to be said. They're always hedging everything. And so you're wanting people to be able to share freely without being mean-spirited. Designation of a leader or co-leader a lot of times will happen, and also specifying when the subject matter experts are needed. And some subject matter experts will be there, some will not. They'll attend at different meetings. Now, I saw this and I thought this was really a great depiction of the team charter. This was put out by the C Point Center. And so this was part of their material. And I thought, man, this is just so nice the way they've done this. And so you'll notice that what they've done is they focus on team results in the middle, but then they have built the graphic around what they think contributes to it. And I thought they really had a good view of this. So they looked at vision, values, team processes, goals, communication, coordination, authority and accountability, and resources. And they felt like all of that has to mesh together in order for your team charter to be good. And I wouldn't disagree with that. You might even have some other things in addition to that you might want to put in, which would be fine. But the point is that these are the type of things that is that bedrock for having a team enjoy working together and be super productive because of what they're sharing with each other. So the team charter helps build these particular pieces. So there's some values that we have and act on as a team and in the team charter. Now, some of these are going to be very natural to your people. Some of your people, regardless of whether they have a charter or not, they function with these values all the time. And then you might have that one person who, man, they don't seem to have any values and they seem to go for the juggler, and I'm sure you don't have that person. But if you have had that person on a team, you realize the challenge of trying to contain that person. So creating a value list for the team charter requires input from the team, not just the project manager or management. And so you're wanting to be able to say, okay, what kind of values do we really want when we're engaged and interacting on these projects? So commitment, loyalty, openness, honesty, dependability, reliability, beliefs, learning, all of these components is what breeds that trust in that team, to where I believe I can count on you. You believe you can count on me. So something as simple as let me look, and I'll send you an email later and let you know about this particular decision. And then if I don't do that, and all of us have forgotten something before. We can handle that. But there seems to be people who have a tendency to say one thing and never follow through. That's the person that's so frustrating to us, because they never follow through. If they say they'll call me, they're not going to call me. If they say they'll send me an email, let me know, they don't do it. You find yourself having to babysit, or you feel like you're checking up on everybody about everything. But these are the values that are listed a lot of times to try to bridge that gap to where we're a person of truth, we're a person of honor. If I say I'm going to send you an email, even if I don't know, I send you an email and say, hey, we haven't found out anything yet, but I just want to follow up with you and let you know that I've checked. And as soon as I hear something, I'll contact you and let you know. That is still the contact that builds that trust and builds that truth. And when you see a team, or if you've worked on a team like many of you probably have, that has that type of connection, it's a whole different level of performance, and it's a whole different level of analysis when you need them to do something. So let's compare the team charter in traditional as compared to what a team charter might actually include in Agile, because it might be a little bit different. So let's look at it on the traditional side. So on the traditional side, one of the things we might be looking at is it could be a living document. That means you're constantly updating it with different stuff. Nothing wrong with that. And some people have it as almost like the 10 Commandments. That's fine too. You and your team are making that decision. It's a communication plan, drives the who and the what from it. You also could have project managers and management make the decisions. And so once again, on the traditional side, I think I have one more here. There we go. Control is the goal. So if you look at a traditional project, we know that it is a command and control type of project, okay? So that means that once we baseline it at the beginning of execution, nothing changes in that project without going through change control. That's why we use traditional, is so that we can have that fixed scope that we're going to deliver at the end of the project, and it's locked in, it's command and control. So many times when people do a team charter, that team charter is going to still have that flavor. Why? It's command and control. You're wanting your team to give input, you're wanting your team to give feedback, but project manager controls it from the aspect of making decisions. Management controls it based on making decisions. It's command and control. Nothing wrong with that. That is traditional project management, and people have been very successful with those. But your charter on the Agile side might be totally different. For an example, it could be a living document too, meaning that you're updating it based on new behaviors, new values, or new outcomes that you're wanting to see. But the piece that's a little different is, remember, in Agile, you're wanting your team to be functioning at the highest level possible. So what you're wanting to do is reinforce face-to-face communication. They're not sending emails, and they're trying their best not to attend a bunch of meetings. They're many times co-located is what the goal is, but most of us don't have that luxury of having co-located teams. So you have your people in different areas, but they do engage and they do interact, and you might have meetings where they're engaging face-to-face. And so the goal here is speed of communication, speed of making a decision, and speed of delivery to give that customer value as quick as possible. Now, teams make the most decision on the Agile side. Project manager, if they do have one, they don't make as many decisions. They're more supportive. They're more as someone who's removing the roadblocks. And that the purpose behind that is letting that team be able to decide. And of course, they're being held accountable for those outcomes that happen with that. And there's that increase of transparency is the goal. The team is transparent on what they're thinking about the project and what solutions they think. And so when you're looking at a team charter, even though there's a lot of similarities on this, there could be a lot of difference when you're talking about empowerment and authority and decision-making abilities. And nothing wrong with that, because the cultures of these two frameworks and methodologies are going to be different. Traditional, it's command and control. Agile, you're wanting it to be open-ended. You're wanting it to be change-driven. That's why you're doing Agile, is so that you can make those adjustments and probably hit some kind of moving target as fast as possible. Now, there's some key components of team charters, and so we'll hit several of these with you, and so that you can have this. So the purpose or vision of the team, team goals, team roles, you'll have some key work processes, team behaviors, team decision-making processes. And so a lot of times, some of this is even broken down on what we can do inside the team, and then what decisions do we have to make outside the team or escalate to someone else. And so we'll talk about escalation here in a moment, but it does make a difference for people to understand that. And sometimes those escalation would be because of based on how much time it's going to take for that change, or based on that escalation, based on how much money it would be. So we can't make that decision. We have to escalate it up to someone else. Now, over on the traditional side, The team might be more of a recommendation committee. They're making recommendations to the project manager, they're sharing insights, and they're a good, strong team, but they don't have decision-making power. The project manager is still making that power. So the point is that both can be very successful with the project teams, both can be very successful in using the teams, even though the flavor is going to be significantly different. So let's look at some practical components of the team charter. So actions if only one person is carrying out most of the work effort. So when we work on some of these projects, it's a lot of times we talk about like we have this big monstrous team, and maybe you do, but many people are working on a team that might have only 2 or 3 people for their section, and so they're working on a piece of it. You might be for a matter of fact, you might be the person making the decision and the person doing it, and so you might not have anybody you're having to talk with. So that ought to minimize some of your conflict right there. If you're making the decision, you're the one doing it, so you're not going to have conflict over solutions. But sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 people and they have just a different view and they look at it just a little different. So preferences of when meetings are scheduled. Now this has turned into kind of a hot spot of discussion. One of the things that we see, and you can kind of measure it based on your culture and your organization, is project managers are verbalizing that they're about meeting to death. They feel like they're going to meetings all day and they can't do anything on their project because they're just going to so many different meetings. The second thing that we're starting to hear about the meetings, though, is that not only are they going to a lot of meetings, but one meeting finishes and they're late to the next meeting, and that meeting finishes and they're late to the next meeting, and so they feel bad that they're walking in 10 minutes late, and some of the people on that team look at them as if, wow, you're disrespectful, you're not following guidelines, we're going to meet at this particular time. And yet just the sheer nature of the culture of all of these meetings are causing people to just domino coming in late. And so recently I was talking with a project manager about this, and one of the things that we could do to change that, if that happens to be the culture, is offset the meetings, in the sense that, first off, don't have a meeting if you don't need one, but if you feel like you need one, offset it. Rather than a 2:00 meeting, have the second meeting start at 2:10. Have the third meeting start at 3:10, whatever the case is. That 10 minutes gives them transition time from one meeting to the next. Even if you're doing it virtually, it still takes time to get off of one call and get onto another call. And so those kind of things happen. Obstacles which could hurt the team and keep them from reaching their goals is one of the components sometimes. How long do you expect meetings to last? The idea that people are just going to come to a meeting and just have this long, boring, enduring, endless meeting just poke me in the eye. Nobody wants those kind of meetings. So what we want to do is build in a time box, and we'll borrow that from the Agile side, that this is going to be a 50-minute meeting. And if we're running it with an agenda, we're scooting through that meeting pretty quick. And obviously, there will be some other things that we might have to put on the sidebar to talk about maybe at another time or in addition to this. But these long, endless meetings are lasting for hours. Nobody wants to attend those things. And almost everybody will verbalize that, if they can, that they don't like those kind of meetings. It's just too crazy. Now, if we've got all crisis and things are burning up and things are falling apart, we've all had those crisis meetings where you're trying to keep the ship from sinking. Okay. But I'm talking about the week to week meetings that we get into and you think, gosh, this is just horrible. So we need to talk about that and time box that meeting. 50-minute meeting, watch the time box, and then move that meeting along and be able to get to what we're going to say and move along. So how long do you expect meetings to last? How is work distributed? Is it just the SMEs? SMEs, we're running out of SMEs. I don't know how it is at your organization, but company after company is talking about how SMEs are taking other jobs and going other places, and none have been really developed within that company. And so what happens is that we are anemic with not enough subject matter experts. And so that's really us. We've really kind of set ourselves up by not transferring some of those skills over. How are deadlines decided? Are the deadlines just kind of thrown over the wall? Oh my gosh, I hope not, because once again, we're using that deadline and honoring it as if it is this holy grail over here that somebody has analyzed. And so how did that deadline come up in the first place? And what happens if someone doesn't meet those type of commitments? If someone is mean-spirited in a meeting or does say something that's hateful, what happens? How is this escalated? How do we even talk about those things? People do not, well, first off, people feel bullied in those type of meetings. We can feel bullied by anybody, a team member. It could be, we can feel bullied by management sitting in that meeting too. So how do we come across? Are we kind? Or do we come across, or do we have good manners? I mean, thanking somebody for getting something, thank you for that report, and anybody have a question about the report, and common courtesies can go a long way. And so, and how do we come across with our demeanor? Are we kind to the people? Are we nice? All of that's going to be a piece of it. Now, you'll always have those people who say, well, there's no need for us to be nice. We've got a job to do. No, we can be nice and we can have a job to do at the same time. There's no reason for us to think that we don't have to do that. So both of those are possible. All right, let's go a little further. So how will the team handle different things like opinions? Sometimes when people have different opinions, everybody shuts up, and that's really the last thing you want. You want different opinions. That's why you have a team of people there. When you have a different of opinion, you're going to have a better resource pool of what to do with the next steps. And so opinions are, you ought to cherish this from your people, that they're sharing different opinions. Solutions. What do we do when people have different solutions? Talk through both sides to see what's the better solution here. Or estimates. I've seen people who, well, they're adamant about their estimate and somebody else is adamant about it. We'll talk through it. And here's something: if the estimates are different, maybe take the higher estimate in the beginning, because you can adjust it later on. Take the higher estimate and go with it, because, and let's see, maybe they are right that higher estimate is what's needed. And especially with all the projects your people have on their plate, that higher estimate might be a godsend to you, for you to be able to use that for your tracking and for your scheduling. So the point is that some of these things that we sometimes treat as and don't want to touch are some of the things that we need to touch in that team charter. So how will work be evaluated? Who's evaluating whether it's good or bad? Who's evaluating the next steps? How are decisions made? Is the project manager making the decision and we're recommending things? Are we making a decision, or is management making the decision over all of us? And so all of that's going to make a difference on the culture of that team charter. What is consensus? And so this sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it? But consensus is not 100%. And so you'll hear people say, well, we didn't have consensus. We didn't have 100%. Consensus never is 100%. Consensus, though, in general, normally when you're at 80%, and this is the best idea we have right now, you might have consensus right here, but you're also leaving the door open that we might need to change this if we get a better solution or better idea down the road to choose something different. And then what will you do if one person will not concede and go with the team with the solution or the idea, and they're just adamant you're wrong? That's going to be a one-on-one discussion, either with a project manager or a team lead or something, to kind of find out behind the scenes, why are they so adamant about that estimate or about that solution or about that direction? They might have good reasons to be, and they might absolutely be right. But we don't see it. None of us are seeing that. So that discussion might need to be something here. My point in saying this structure for the charter is so that you and your people have the freedom to disagree agreeably. They can talk and share these things. And even if they totally disagree with the direction we're going, I still would rather hear it in the meeting than I had to hear it by the water fountain or someplace else. So that's what you're doing. So your team charter could have a lot of different things. For an example, we just gave you just a little team behavior board here. So you're including team members, obviously the values that you hold, the group behaviors, could be roles that you're going to, could be in your team charter. You could have metrics in there of how we're going to monitor a person's behavior. Right now, one of the big things that's happening across the country, and maybe it's happening with your organization, is that people are working from home. And so we're trying to figure out how you manage people from home, even though almost every survey says that productivity went up. Okay. But what's happening is many companies have switched over to some type of software that measures whether you're in front of your computer during that day. And so I was talking to a gentleman just recently, and he said, yeah, it measures it. It measures your mouse movement to where it makes sure you, and to know you're there by mouse movement. And then he said, but on Amazon, you can buy this software now that moves your mouse. And I cracked up. I thought, man, we've got to work around for everything. But once again, we're trying to figure out, how can you measure somebody based on not seeing them? And they could be anywhere in the world. So who is on the team? Let's talk about that side. So team members differ depending on the goal of the project. So as you start working with your team, you might have some very high level people in the sense of they've got a lot of skill. They maybe work for the organization a long time. They understand the organization's culture. They understand how the philosophies, they understand the goals. Listen, this team of people should be making a lot more decisions probably than what they are, because what you have here is you have people who are working on this who understand the company. Everything doesn't have to go back necessarily and have a manager or a project manager say yes or no. Many of these people, you're going to take their recommendation most likely anyway. And so many times we're not letting people make the decision that they really are capable. Now, I understand the structure and I understand this doesn't fit everybody. So I know folks, you might be saying, well, that doesn't fit us. I get it. And your team charter's got to fit your culture. But I'm just saying a role of encouragement is many of these people are in a position experience wise that, you know what, I wouldn't dare think something different than what they're recommending, because they've been there, they've seen it, they've touched it, they've done all those things. A second part of this is when the project is new, it includes new technology, new processes. There might be more consultants and management involvement at that point. Why? We don't know anything. Your team's learning. We got that learning curve that we all get into. But over time, you're going to see your team start catching on. How have they learned it? Guess what? They've learned it from that expensive consultant that you have working with them. They've picked up on it by working through all of these things with that consultant. And this is going to benefit the depth of your company, because that worker is learning the knowledge and getting that knowledge base from that consultant by working on that. If the project's like a previous project, internal team members and worker bees might make up most of the team. And so have we done this project before? And so those projects, we seem to be able to pull it together. But that still doesn't mean that we might not need a team charter in order to pull it together, even though this one is very similar to something else. It seems to be that these new projects, and we're going to have those, and these new technologies, and we're going to have those, and be thankful for it, because it changes the way we do business. Sometimes we're on that cutting edge, and by being on the cutting edge, we don't have the experience and we don't know the goal. The goal seems to be moving out here, and that's a little bit of a challenge for us. The other piece that we have to look at too is what's known as team interdependencies. What other teams will this team collaborate with about the project? And so, in other words, you're not just putting a team charter together for your core team, but your people are going to be interacting with other stakeholders, a lot of different stakeholders, other companies, maybe other agencies, regulatory things, groups, any other thing. Well, you're wanting your people to be able to interact and to be able to get that information in a timely manner and to interact in the proper way. So are there any specific needs from our team that other teams require? So in other words, are we having to pass any of our information along to someone else? What is the best way to communicate with the other teams? So today, communication's all over the place. If you look at all the Agile and the Scrum methodologies, they want you co-located and face-to-face. It's just not feasible in every case. And so if you are co-located and you're working on you're doing Agile and Scrum, and all of your people are co-located where you can do that, that's awesome. But the vast majority of companies don't have that. We have people doing stuff just like we're doing this morning. You're scattered all over the place and you're working on multiple projects, and here we are talking like this. So what's the best way to communicate? Whatever way we can communicate to get the information there. And you've got to take into effect time zones and everything else. For an example, many of you who are on our call every month, you heard me say last month that I was so excited because we were shaping up and putting together a special project that we're going to be doing training for Ukrainian project managers. And so we weren't sure how all that was going to be fitting together, but it's a done deal. And so in March, I'm doing 2 days of training for those guys, those men and women in Ukraine, to help them be ready for the recovery effort. And our plan is to do 8 to 10 seminars for them over this period of time. And so the game plan is our class is already filled. I think we have 63 people already in the class, because I'm getting other people who are wanting to get in, and the class is pretty much closed for right now with that level of that number of people. But the point in how do we communicate? How are we going to be able to do this? You're wanting people to be ready to be able to have that recovery effort and have those skills when needed. Well, that's what we're wanting with our team. We want our people to have the right information with the right skills so that they're able to do the job that you want them to do at the right time. And so we have to think ahead of the curve. So for an example, as we know, Ukraine's still in a war effort, but at some point there will be a recovery effort for that country. And that's what we're wanting to do. So what's the frequency of communication? If you've ever had somebody who didn't communicate very much, that just drives you nuts. But many times you might have the person who their communication communicating with you way too much. They're wanting a day, they're wanting a daily conversation and 15 emails, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have time to do all this junk of just sending stuff back. I mean, so you want to balance that right kind of communication with everyone. Now, who are you communicating with? So I borrowed this from one of our other programs that we have, major and minor and secondary stakeholders. Obviously, you're communicating to a lot of different types of stakeholders based on the project and the type of organization you have. And so one of the things that we have to do is understand that not everybody that is on our screen right now has to have the same information, and be thankful they don't. There are some people who absolutely, they need everything that we're doing about that project. That's my core team. And if I've got a vendor, absolutely, they need to know as much as possible. But you've got some stakeholders here that's on the fringe that you'll connect with them from time to time. And I'll show you a graphic here in a moment. You'll connect to them, you'll update them periodically, maybe once a quarter or once a month, but you're not sending them every little thing here. And in many of those cases, you're not asking them to give input about the team charter. Your team charter is much more your immediate core team that you're working with here. So what you're looking at with that team charter is you're trying to reinforce the purpose or vision of that team. So why was the team formed? Normally it's because of a project. You're trying to create a change or fix a problem, or you're trying to do something new that's going to be innovative. Normally those are some of the things that you're looking at. They gives a high level of the overarching outcomes that you're wanting from that team. Purpose connects to the real meaning of the project rather than to a specific individual project goal. And the purpose focuses on why the project's undertaken. So you're wanting your people on the team actually to dream the dream of the organization, of the strategic focus, of the purpose. Now, you might work for an organization, you think there's no way. Our people, they're just coming to doing the job and going home. They're not dreaming the dream. They're not connected to the purpose. Think about the motivation for that compared to other companies that people are dreaming the dream and connected to the purpose. You look at many of the people, for an example, with Starbucks, regardless what you think of Starbucks, Starbucks has people who are evangelizing their purpose. They're evangelizing their organization. Why? They love Starbucks, everything about it. And you'll see this. You'll see this with Panera. Panera has people who they are evangelizing the purpose of Panera. You'll see it with Google. You'll see it with Meta or Facebook. You see it with all of these where people have bought into it. And of course, you always have employees that don't. But the point is, you're wanting your team to buy into and believe in the project because, once again, it's going to be that positive nature of them being able to do that and move that project forward, and also bring the team members along with new education, new ways of doing things, and help them in their industry as well as in their total career. So the team's individual or internal goals would include, for an example, the team members staying engaged, transparent, seeking out help early if they're having problems, supporting team decisions, communicating freely and open, expanding the knowledge of each team member. Now, you probably have noticed that the team charter talks about educating the people, passing on the team knowledge. This is a much bigger deal all the way across the world than ever before. And a lot of this is being driven about passing on this knowledge because we have gone through a huge pendulum swing because of COVID. And so as our baby boomers have retired and are retiring in the next 3 years, you're seeing a pendulum swing, and the dominant group in the workplace now is not Generation X, 44 million of them, it's 77 million millennials. And the millennials are open to coaching, mentoring, and that knowledge. And so because they've got so long to go in their careers. So that's exactly where everything is shifting, is to be able to reinforce that knowledge. And so even PMI has shifted things to where we pass on that knowledge. The idea that I'm a subject matter expert and nobody in the company knows what I know is almost ludicrous in that mindset. So what you're seeing is that we want to be able to pass something over. I could become the bottleneck if I'm the only person who knows that. So you're wanting to be able to pass that over. But once again, you're working in a skeleton crew in your company most of the time, and so you don't have every position filled, and you don't have a lot of extra people, and so that's where that challenge is, and nobody's really wanting to hire the extra people right now because of those particular challenges. Now let's go a little further here. Let's talk about the output of the team member. So somebody says, well, how do I monitor somebody when they're virtual and they're not co-located? Well, you're going to monitor based on what are they delivering? What are they producing? So productivity levels, you can measure stuff. It might be different than it was where you could walk down the hall and talk with them. But you could walk down the hall and they not be productive, but they were there and you assume they're productive because they're there. Well, here you're looking for productivity because they're not there, and that's okay. Most of their people are more productive with this. A deliverable list. Is there certain deliverables? What am I expecting them to output from their day's worth of work for that project? Are they writing code, or are they creating a product? Are they creating designs, or what are they doing? And so you're looking for deliverables. Sprint overview. If you're running it in Agile, you have a sprint overview. At the end of every sprint, you're handing some type of feature or functionality off to that customer. You know what? That's an easy thing to look for. Why? Because that customer is going to be getting some of the features, and they're going to be giving feedback about those features, how they work and how they're functioning. And then what's your expectation even from the customer? You're expecting the customer to return your call when you call them? Are you expecting them to respond within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever some of those pieces could be? So some of these things are not left to chance, and that's where frustration comes. If we leave a lot of stuff that's unsaid and to chance, and then we're frustrated. Well, they didn't call me back. Well, that person just doesn't seem to be productive. What are they producing? And we've got all these frustrations. And the truth is, let's be clear about it. Here's what we're doing. Here's what I'm looking for from you. Here's what we're doing. Here's the time period I'm looking at. And if that time period doesn't work, then let's talk about that. Let's go roles for a moment. In your team charter, you could even go down the direction of roles and responsibilities if you needed to. So roles and responsibilities can change depending on the project, the number of resources, obviously. And so a roles and responsibility matrix helps keep the team straight and on the current role. Now, the challenge that you get into, and I saw this online and I loved it. This is put out by pmtips.net. And I saw this because this is broader than a normal responsibility assignment matrix. And I liked what they've seen. I've never seen it before. And so, give kudos to these folks because I thought this was good. Many of you are working on multiple projects. We get it. But many of you are working with multiple roles. And so you have one role for one project. You walk across the hall and sit in another meeting, you have a different role and responsibility. So the responsibility assignment matrix for a project makes a whole difference of what hat are you wearing at that moment. Now, if you look at this, we're used to seeing a responsibility assignment matrix, right? And so we're used to using the RACI chart. All of us have been trained, if you've gone through PMI, on the RACI chart: responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. Notice what they're doing here. And I just thought it was an interesting twist. And so I'll have to get up here real close. So I'm sorry, you're going to see my forehead. So I apologize in order to read this, but they're using RSCNAG. R was for responsible. S is for support. C is must be consulted. N is must be notified. A is approval required, and G is gate reviewer. Now, look at what they've done here with the RACI chart. And so most of us have seen the normal RACI chart, the normal RAM, responsibility assignment matrix. But what an interesting piece that they've done here. So they have customized this with additional lettering to where they can actually take their project team, and notice they have separated it from their project team, and then they have other stakeholders, which might require something a little bit different. And some of these would be some of the fringe people that might be looking at the project just periodically. So my point in showing you this, I thought this was a great alternative to what we see a lot of times as the RACI chart. And so that allows us to see something different. The other piece is key work processes. What kind of processes are we going to need and be following with the team charter? So meetings, what kind of process? Having an agenda and following certain steps, making recommendations. Are we going to take notes at every meeting, or just certain meetings that we're going to take notes at? And then who's taking the notes and where do the notes go? All of that. Communication, how are we going to communicate? Decision making, how are we going to make the decisions? Crisis. If we are in a crisis, how do we escalate it, or how do we pull our people together to be able to deal with that crisis and put out that fire and it really be treated like a legitimate crisis? Also, what about project changes or updating management? So let's talk real quickly here about the meetings themselves. So processes to prepare the meeting, the agendas, the meeting minutes, the facilitation procedures. Many people have never been trained how to facilitate a meeting, how to do an agenda. Many of us have picked it up because we've seen it, but the piece that we're looking at here is going to be that facilitation piece. How do you play the traffic cop in the meeting? You slow people down and you try to get people to talk, and you direct traffic through that entire meeting. On the communication side, you look at the processes of types of preferred communication and documentation, and your documentation might be different than anybody else's. And you know what? That's okay. Your industry maybe puts more emphasis on documentation, and you say, well, we're running agile projects. There shouldn't be any documentation. That might be a general rule, but not in your case. It might be that you need documentation, even though you're doing an agile type of project or a scrum type of project. And then, of course, scheduling the meetings, listing who's who, specifying face-to-face or virtual so people know what are the next steps. Every meeting when you get ready to leave should have next steps. What are the next steps? What are the assignments that people need to understand so that they're walking out of here knowing these are the next 3 steps, and here are the people who have some assignments so that we know what we're going to be doing. And then, of course, decision making. Who's going to make that decision? And so making sure who has the authority to make the decision, or if they don't have the authority, who's making the recommendation, so that they know what those next steps are going to be, is going to be a piece of it. And then, of course, crisis. Oh my gosh, don't we hate these days? When you get into crisis as a project manager, how many times have we all walked around thinking, man, I wish I'd gone to truck driving school? I mean, those are horrible days, man. Everything's coming up. So looking at what is the process and who do we go to when there's a crisis? Normally we have some type of chain of command, and that's exactly what you're wanting to do with that. And then what about those changes? Are we following strict change orders? Are we designating who has the power to approve changes? Does the team have the power to approve any changes? Or are we on the agile side where the team is calling most of the shots, and once we start a sprint or an iteration, there are no changes for that 3 or 4 weeks until it's finished, and then we make changes before we start the next sprint or iteration. And so understanding that pattern helps everybody be able to perform and interact the right way. And then processes to follow for updating management. How often does management need updating? And in a crisis, we're going to update them instantly, no doubt. But periodically, in a week or in a day, do they need different types of updating, and whose responsibility? And do we need to be pointing out if we see a problem to management in that pre-crisis mode? What did we see, so that management understands we anticipate this is what's going to happen because of these triggers or these characteristics? And does that have to be a status meeting, or do we have access to management, or do we have access to that person of power? So all of that being said, with all those things, we're looking back at these ideas of trying to treat our people in this great way, to where we've got this positive team. And even though we deal with some things that might be negative or some crisis, we still are doing it in a positive manner. So here's some positive team behaviors. Removing the ego, checking our position at the door. In other words, everybody knows that you're a project manager. Everybody knows that you're a subject matter expert. You don't have to remind anybody. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows your management. So can I check my position at the door and give people that freedom to talk, or to be able to, for us to talk about that issue and maybe even disagree in that situation? Can I remove my ego from that? Can I actively listen to the ideas? And can I get people to take responsibility for what they are recommending or what they're doing? Can we be truthful, even when truthfulness might not go along with the common group there, with different ideas? And can we do it nicely? Can we make decisions? Can I give feedback? Can I give positive? Can I provide suggestions without being a jerk? And can I say it in a soft manner and give other alternatives that might go against the grain? Can I collaborate without being critical? And also, can I demonstrate encouragement? Can I encourage people? And you're going to try new things. We are in an exciting time with new technology happening every 18 months. Man, there's going to be some new stuff that's going to roll out for every one of us. Now, these team decision-making processes have a huge piece to this. Trying not to criticize an idea or a solution until you've heard what that solution or that idea is first. Encouraging them to talk, encouraging them to explain the details of it. Expecting disagreements. Looking for collaboration and creating action plans for those steps of what steps can we take to be able to deal with these pieces that might not fit just perfect in a project. Determining if the team has the power to implement the solution, or do we have to wait for another step of authority or a sign off or something. And that ability to discuss how to measure and verify the solution's working. Think of how many times we've made decisions, we put solutions in, or we made decisions to do something, but really we had no measurement to determine if we're any better off than we were before. We made a decision, we did something, we had a solution, But was that solution any better than the solution we had before? Or is it just something different than what we had before? So when we're talking about team decision making, this is what we're looking at here. Trying not to criticize, trying to encourage, trying to expect some disagreements, but do it softly. We don't have to be antagonistic. And then also, you're looking for collaboration. Explain more. Tell me a little more. I know you don't agree with this, so why? What are you looking at? What are you seeing? You're measuring something for why you're disagreeing, and you're trying to pull all that together. And then you're also, you're looking at discussing how to measure and how to verify that that solution is there. You're looking at creating that action plan, establishing the next steps, and determining what is going to be the implementation piece for being able to put that solution in place. All of those is where that camaraderie of that team is going to be working, and the team chart is going to help you do that piece. All right, so let's pull these last few pieces together here quickly. So escalation path. When things go wrong, when members violate the charter, what do? Can it go to the project manager? Does the team deal with it? So what is considered a violation? How many violations can a person make before it needs escalating? Will there be some confronting done by the project manager or by the team? And also, does the team have enough power to remove someone from the team? So can we kick that person off the team and remove them? And some teams have that power, some do not. Now, the point is that one project might have a lot of power in the team and the next one might have no power in the team. So it's not like one size fits all. It would go across the bar to a lot of things. So let me give you one possible escalation path to consider. So discuss it one-on-one with the person. You could secondly go in and discuss it with a witness or somebody from the team and talking with them. You could then talk about it with the entire team. I've heard of teams doing that because the team had so much power. And then it went to management. So actually, by the time it got to management, it had already gone through several steps where you had a team member who was being really obnoxious and not willing to follow the rules. So everything's going to be different. Everyone will be a little different in those situations as well. So as we're looking at this, you're really kind of doing these multi-level things. And so level one, discussing it with them. Level two, the witness. Level three had the team, and then of course level four was where you went to management with this. And of course, many of you would say, well, that looks like progressive discipline, and it is, no doubt about it. There is some, because sometimes people will do it and they didn't realize how they came across. They didn't realize that they were making those kind of statements. Now let me show you a real brief outline of a team charter just for your reference, and that way you can kind of, if you've never had one, you can look at this and make it better for your organization if you choose to use this. So the first thing that you're looking at is the purpose or the vision of the team. So every team or every project might have a totally different vision, obviously, because you have different outcomes, which means that your team might have different outcomes for different situations. Second part of this, what kind of team goals do you have? For that team. And so you might have 4 or 5 goals that you're wanting them to reach and achieve. And so the goals for this, team roles, is the team going to be broken down with different roles and responsibilities? So this gives you a chance to be able to talk about that. Any key work processes that they're going to be using in this team that you're wanting them to follow. For an example, facilitation is going to be one of those. Obviously, you're going to be running meetings with an agenda. You're going to be following all of those. What kind of team behaviors are you wanting them to have? What kind of team behaviors are you wanting them to demonstrate? And so you're wanting people to be kind. You're wanting people to be approachable. You're wanting people to disagree agreeably. I mean, I think those are some common things that we want as mankind. And I think that's an important piece of this. And then team decision-making processes. What kind of process do they go through to make a decision as a team? If they have a lot of authority, the process is going to be different than if they basically are a recommendation committee. So all of that will be a little bit different for them. All right, so let's pull this last couple of slides together. So onboarding new team members. So you've got this in place. So how do you onboard the new team members into this team charter? So give the team charter to new team members, explain how it works, and you're painting the cultural picture to them of what the expectation is. Detail the roles, the responsibilities on the team. Give specifics on how and what they should do and for the first couple of weeks. Set some expectations, how and when to communicate and at what level to the team so that they understand it. Discuss accountability within the team and the process. And do not micromanage the team member, but help them help and do not hurt. And so that's what you're looking at, is you're trying to get them in, you're trying to get them to feel comfortable, you're trying to get them to feel comfortable working together. Now, I will tell you, as many of you probably have experienced and know, it would be totally different trying to onboard somebody today if everybody's virtual than to be able to onboard them and bring them into a meeting where they're seeing people face to face. Many of you had to do that during the COVID with new people. You brought them on, you onboarded them through virtual, and they worked for months through virtual, never meeting face to face. So I think it's a totally different set of characteristics for that, and I think that is indeed a huge challenge when you're looking at those particular pieces. Now, let me close out with a couple of things here before I show you these last two slides. The team charter is not perfect, and it's going to be customized to your organization. And here's the thing: if your team's already functioning like this and you don't need it, then don't use it. You don't need another piece of documentation or paperwork if you don't need it. But if you are struggling with some of this, and your teams your meetings are just running on and on, you probably are needing more structure than what's there. And so you can do that in a very nice way with the team charter. So just something to think about, something for you to consider. Now, let me throw a couple of things at you. Next month, we're going to be talking about project schedules, creating authentic and accurate project schedules. And so we're going to be talking about traditional, but we're going to be talking about Agile as well. And so both of those are going to be part of that. It's going to be on the 10th, so it's only a couple of weeks away, so it's not very far. And so it'll be on the 10th, and then we'll be going from 10 to 11. You'll get a notice from Kim on that, just like normal. We've got PMP exam prep boot camps. We've got all of ours are virtual now. We're running about 97% first-time passing rate since 2021 with our boot camps right now. So it's using the PMI material that has been written. So we've got them in April all the way through December. So that's something for you to look at if you'd like. And then also our free mastermind group. Now, many of you have heard about these. A mastermind group is free to anybody anywhere in the world who wants to take it. And we've had people in different places of the world who sign up for this. This is a 5-day, and when I say 5-day, it's not really 5 days. It happens over a 5-day period. And so they have about an hour of work to do in 5 days. And it's helping them get prepared and understand what the PMP is going to involve, helps them start filling out their application. And a couple of things happen. First off, they get 5 contact hours for attending that week. I do a couple of Zoom calls and answer any kind of question that they have about the boot camp. They get the lowest price of our boot camp for attending this. And then we also do a drawing. We do a free scholarship of one person from every mastermind group. And so they come to the boot camp for free. And so we do a giveaway. And so my granddaughter is the one who chooses who gets the free scholarship. And so that happens. So if you have people who are wondering about the PMP, and of course, if you've got it, you know how elusive some of this is in trying to jump through the hoops. This is a great course for people to go through. I've got videos on there for them to watch, and then they have access to me a couple of times that week. Put them in this. The price for our boot camp jumps from the high of $28.50 down to $15.50, which is the lowest, and that's with the guarantee. And so if you've got somebody who can benefit from the mastermind group, put them in. Even if they don't come to our boot camp, that's fine. Put them in here and help them be able to understand a little bit better how to do that. Now, let me stop right here. We're just about out of time. I want to thank you so much for being part of our webinars. Our webinars have just grown over the last 3 years. And I just want to thank you so much for taking time, first off, to watch this. And I know many of you will watch these and do playbacks with your people and use the handouts that Kim fixes up for you for discussions. Thank you so much for that and the positive feedback that we've gotten from you. And I really appreciate you watching. Many of you have signed up for the whole year already. I thank you for that. And don't hesitate to pass some of these along to other people if they'd benefit you. Okay. So listen, I know you got a lot to do. You don't want to be in another meeting for sure. So listen, God bless you guys. Go Chiefs. I hope they're wonderful this weekend. And I hope you guys have a wonderful time celebrating this weekend with your family. Okay. God bless you guys. Thank y'all so much for being here this morning. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.